Eastern and Western media have plenty of differences when it comes to how they make their films. And on this episode of the Plastic Power Podcast, we're going to be getting into this. What's going on, guys? This is Starblast Studios. And as usual, we also got the man, the myth, the legend, Daredevil 19.
Hello, everyone.
And of course, we got Jordan the Dragonlee returning for this episode today. Again, make sure you check out his channel in the description down below. It talks about a lot of these different things. Again, this episode is going to be about the differences between Eastern and Western media.
Yeah. So the last podcast we did, me, Jordan, Starblast started talking about differences between like manga. between manga and comics, how all three of us, we all prefer like anime and manga over like comic books, like American comic books. But we were just discussing the differences, what we liked more over this, how comics are very repetitive. And it just started into a very interesting conversation. Now, we were saying like anime or manga, we always find the characters more interesting than say like Iron Man or maybe Thor or some comic characters are.
And feel free to disagree, but it's just like this is just like how we feel. Like, because I know a lot of people have grown great attachments to Western stuff, especially because a majority of us live in the U.S., on the Western side of the world and such.
That's correct.
Well, the comic book characters also evolve over time. You know, I think at a base level, a lot of these characters, upon conception, weren't really that groundbreaking in terms of concept and stuff like that. They do get better, like it has gotten better as time goes on. But when you think about comics at a base level, most of the time the characters themselves are characterized very simply. The concept behind them isn't necessarily that complex. Manga and comics both tend to take from mythology mainly, also science and stuff like that, but mainly mythology as the inspiration for their stories. And it just seems like it's not, it goes beyond, with just media in terms of East and West. Like the mythology and the lore in the East, and a lot of times is a lot more complicated, a lot more nuanced, a lot more interesting than the lore in the West. A lot of Western mythology and lore and stuff like that is it's simplified, it's straight to the point. It's also like a regurgitation of like different legends that also existed in the West in the past. So I think that's also a big part of it. I think that the places that they're drawing inspiration from are in most cases more interesting in the East than they are in the West. And they're like we were talking about last time after the podcast. In most cases, Eastern media is also more willing to take risks in terms of what they're willing to put out there, in comparison to Western media. And that's the way a lot of Western media comes off boring and repetitive in some cases, because what they are willing to do within that medium is very limited in comparison to Eastern media.
Yeah, you had a word specifically for it, that like that Hollywood was like in this lock, like that people were like in this, like, what was it called? Media spoiled or whatever?
Yeah. Well, becoming media spoiled it's something that Hollywood's definitely aware of, and it's something that they try to avoid, but it's in a sense unavoidable. But essentially the idea is that the more you consume media and the more that you get used to certain concepts, the more you see the same concepts play out over and over and over again. Because like I said, it's all based in mythology and lore from our past. Like a lot of the ideas that people consider original aren't really that original. They're just recreations of, or like a clever spin on a concept that already existed before. There's lots of stuff in literature and mythology and stuff that you can take inspiration from and mix it together to make some crazy product.
So it's
most
not notably like Dragon Ball, because it's like it was a parody of Journey to the West in a specific way. That's a big one right there.
It's not that you can't be creative with just a minor amount of concepts. It's just that Western media in particular is dealing with an issue because they're constantly at odds with their unwillingness to do anything outside of the norm for marketing purposes because they think that's what's going to make money. So there's like a battle between that and also their need to create new groundbreaking content, you know? So it's like, they have to strike a really precise balance in order to continue to be lucrative. And I think a lot of media is suffering from that today. I think that's a lot of the reason that you're seeing, you know, regurgitations of past titles that don't quite meet up to the expectations of the previous titles, because they're obviously money grabs because they don't have new ideas and they're not willing to take risks.
Like, look at Star Wars, for example. You saw The Force Awakens? It was pretty much like a redoing of A New Hope. So that's a perfect example.
Well, yeah, as a love letter to Star Wars, as a love letter, to me, that part of it is fine, but it does have the missing ingredient that Star Wars had, and that Star Wars also takes from mythology and lore that, you know, isn't being. They're not using that. They're not using the source material for the source material as the inspiration for their product. They're just using, you know, Star Wars. They're not thinking about what Star Wars used to create its product. They're just creating a product based on what they know about Star Wars. And that's very limiting. It makes it feel inauthentic. It makes it feel like it's fan made. You know, a lot of fan made content has that issue. They're not taking into consideration what exactly the inspiration for that content was. They're just looking at the content and they're just taking from that. In a lot of cases, that's a mistake.
I think the Han Solo movie had that kind of problem going on with it, right? Because like it's like, here, let's take a popular character from Star Wars, let's make a whole movie on this, and like, you know, try to expand on it. But it was really like, with the means of which George Lucas created that character, and I never seen this movie, to be fair, but like the common thing that I hear from a lot of people is that it just doesn't seem to capture a lot of that same tonal, same feeling. It feels very distant from the main source of media in that instance right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, another one with that movie, they switched, I think, like directors 3 times. I think they had to rewrite it. So that was just a mess. But that's probably why it was like that. They didn't know what to do with it. But they did do something pretty cool with Star Wars. They did like a bunch of anime episodes.
The first one, well, that's all. See, anime. Here we go. We're getting back into like Eastern media in comparison to Western media. You just brought up anime. You know, like the thing. Here's the thing, and this is something that people just refuse to wrap their minds around. But people really just need to accept this. Star Wars itself is heavily inspired by Buddhism. Okay.
Yep.
Just like Dragon Ball, Star Wars itself, the Sith, the Jedi, the Gray Jedi, all that stuff, like the tenets of the Jedi within Knights of the Old Republic, the game, the dude who created the tenets for each of those Jedi orders took from Buddhist. He stated himself that he took from different Buddhist and Taoist, you know, intellectuals and quotes and stuff like that to create, you know, what their standard was in terms of being a Gray Jedi, a Jedi, a Sith. You know, he that's where the inspiration from that comes from. And like the latest Star Wars series is completely void of those types of themes, and you can feel it and you can see it. You know what I mean? Like, I still enjoyed the films, but like I said, a lot of times, you know, a lot of the reason that Eastern media is more compelling and more interesting is because of where they're getting their inspiration from. It just keeps coming back to that. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's a much more, I mean, how many times have we seen good and evil fight? How many times have we seen this black and white version of storytelling where there's no real nuance? You know, one of the most compelling things about modern media is that we've shed that form of storytelling away because it's become so repetitive. It's become so old, you know? So like, and that's the reason that Eastern media is so compelling, because it's always blurring the lines between good and evil and black and white, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, even it kind of goes to show why, like, especially with if we're talking about with Western stuff. I mean, a lot of the times though, because I think a lot of people, because the you mentioned that they would make the villains a lot more, gray, like not in that type of area. Well, upon mentioning that, I can count a few characters from the Marvel stuff that seem to be very much like having their own ambitions. Like they're not doing it for evil purpose. Thanos, very
Yeah,
big
but it
one.
never starts off that way. That's the thing. It evolves into that. The most primitive versions of those characters were just evil guys. They were just villains. Like those same characters that you're talking about right now, when they were first created, in most cases, I'm not going to say in every case, but in most cases, when those characters were first thought up of, they were just your standard stereotypical cheesy villain with some villain esque motivations. You know what I mean?
That's true. Like because of the way that Thanos' origins was in the comics is what you're referring to.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah,
not just Thanos, but like most characters. Like most characters were just cookie cutter when they first came out. They've grown and they've become more complex over time because of different forms of media, influencing them.
Yeah, that's the reason why a lot of people like Vegeta, but like because he starts off as a villain, kind of goes through his own arc. He wasn't really like supposed to be like a quote unquote villain. He was meant to be from Toriyama's like other concepts of the Monkey King at play to kind of conflict with the other aspect of the Monkey King too,
That's
like
right.
the 6 ear macaque and such. And so but I want to also like kind of rewind a little bit back to what he was originally said. So you mentioned a little bit, and we did talk about this at the end of the previous podcast, but I do want to just kind of bring it back over here. Was a big example of the differences of how the Eastern media is trying out new examples and trying out new things is Food Wars. They do a whole anime talking about food, and how they do food. It's basically like an anime version of like Hell's Kitchen or whatever.
Yeah. So essentially, if you were to walk in to a room of directors or like people who are going to give you money to make products in Japan, and you were to have some wacky, crazy idea like Food Wars, they would be like, they would give you the thumbs up way quicker than someone in the West because, like I said, they have this really high, like ridiculous standard. You can see this in Marvel films. Not that I'm not a fan of the Marvel films, but you can see that
yeah,
they have like there's a standard to like, and that's not necessarily always a bad thing. Like Japanese media in a lot of cases is allowed to be more wacky and zany than American, Western media, which I understand that. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't always come off well to a Western audience, which I think is something that Hollywood is also aware of, is the fact that there's different tastes in media as well. But the thing about it is like it still comes back to my point that like there's always going to be a group of people who is tired of seeing these same things play out over and over and over again, and who wants to go and watch some anime and read some manga. And I've been a nerdy guy most of my life. I've been into Power Rangers, like all this stuff, and most
me
of that
too.
stuff is either directly influenced from or eventually influenced from Japanese or Chinese media. Like Power Rangers itself directly comes from a Japanese show. So
Sentai.
it's
Yep.
just like it's very clear which side is more willing to take risks and use unique ideas in comparison to each other.
Yeah, like try
And
something different. Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the reason that there's a large group of people throughout the United States who prefer to read manga and watch anime in comparison to other forms of media because, like I said, it's just that much more different. It's just there's just it's way more compelling. It's way more rich. It's got more layers to it. Like very rarely is it ever very cookie cutter and very straightforward and to the point. And even when it is, there's normally undertones of complexity due to the fact that, like for Dragon Ball, for instance, takes inspiration from Buddhism and Journey to the West and stuff. And on a surface level, it seems like it's something very simple that you can just enjoy, and you can. But there's also layers to it. So even in simple Japanese media, due to the fact that their culture is so much more rich and they have so much more stuff that they can take from that's just like interesting and compelling. It's just like that. I think that's a lot of the reason that Eastern media, for people like us, is just more compelling, because it's just like
it's getting even more popular as months and years go on. So
yeah, I see what you're saying, because like usually they have like the base concept as the like in Western media, the base concept is very simple, and then they add in all of like the other conflicts and relatability and other form of like heart-to-heart aspects on top of that. The base media when it comes to Japan stuff is it's much more complicated. The other relatable things, the other like things that they add on top is the very simple things. Like there's a lot of like cliches that occur in Japan, and there's a specific reason for that. And the reason for that is that because these cliches not only add recognizability and relatability, but also kind of help shift, like make these these complex themes fit in place with the current story that they are telling. Because a lot of times, like it really is like it does help bring the viewers like into like the kind of like the same world and headspace as these individuals exploring these themes, or like
one thing here's like themes. Here's the perfect explanation, or here's the perfect comparison to how Hollywood treats its media in comparison to the East. Okay, so Dragon Ball Evolution.
Oh God!
Everyone, no, he did it. He did it.
He said it. Take out the pitchforks. Take out the flamethrowers. Pull out the grenade launchers.
I just walked off. He's saying get flamethrowers.
Listen. These writers, look, the people who come up with the concepts that Hollywood implements into their films, in most cases, did not write the material for the media that they're adopting. Okay? They're just taking it to Hollywood, and Hollywood's like, well, how can we make money off this? How can we spin this concept in a way that makes us money? That's the bottom line. Whereas, so that's the reason that you get an abomination like Dragon Ball Evolution, because Dragon Ball Evolution has no consideration for the source material that Dragon Ball is taking inspiration from in comparison to Dragon Ball itself. They're not trying to necessarily tell a very compelling story. And this isn't always the case. Hollywood does, in some cases, want to tell a compelling story. And they're getting better about telling compelling stories through media such as comic books and stuff like that in the modern era. But again, that comes back to them just being short on ideas. But like, if you look at Dragon Ball is a very rich, nuanced culture. It's a culturally rich anime and manga. It has things spread out through the manga that are nods at things that Toriyama appreciates about Chinese culture, Japanese culture, pop culture, things of that nature. It's got stuff spread, like it's hard not to read a chapter of Dragon Ball and not see something that's like, what's going on? Like, once you understand like all the references that Toriyama makes, because it's a reflection of the things that he enjoys in his mind, then you start to understand, whoa, this is a very rich product that a lot of heart and soul was put into. You start to understand, oh, this has a very personal touch to it. This isn't just some commercial product. This is something that someone put genuine effort into. Whereas with like Hollywood, their approach is not that at all. They do put effort into it in the sense that they want it to make money, but putting effort into it in that way is not the same thing as putting effort into creating a product that is going to be naturally compelling and keep the attention of people who consume a mass amounts of media, and that's why I say, like, I do think that they're aware of being media spoiled to a degree, but I also think that they take it for granted and they don't really consider it in a lot of cases. Like I said, it's really hard to strike that balance and, take risks without, it's not even necessarily that I don't understand where they're coming from, because I do understand that they're playing with money, and it's not easy to take money and like take risks with money. Like I understand that, especially in the world we live in today. But it just seems like to me that we're going in the direction of, we're just going to start stealing mass amounts of Japanese media in the United States and trying to create commercial versions of it, because we are reaching the bottom of the barrel in terms of being willing to allow creative minds to create new media in the United States. We are at an all-time high in terms of being unwilling to let people create compelling media, and we are at an all-time low in terms of ideas that are for grabs. And you can see that on Netflix. You can see that all throughout, like, everything that's coming. Like, we just had a Cowboy Bebop and live action thing coming out. We've had,
just a live action.
They're eventually going to do One Piece, from what I've heard.
Series,
So it's just like, it's very obvious what's going on, and I do think that we're reaching a point now to where the approach that Hollywood has to entertainment is going to start having like some really bad negative side effects for, people they're gonna make money no matter what. People just watch things. People just films are something that people just consume. That new Velma show was a great example of that. There was tons of people all throughout Twitter who said, "Oh, this is the worst thing ever," but yeah, it was one of the most viewed shows like ever.
The Dahmer
you know
show?
what I mean? The Velma show, that new show.
Oh yep.
Yeah, there was all kinds of people who said they hated it, but yet it was watched like crazy. So people are going to watch stuff anyway. But if you want to break ground and you want to create stuff that sticks and stuff that people are going to take with them for 20, 30 years, like Superman, Iron Man, Dragon Ball, all this stuff that people are still trying to keep alive today, you're going to have to be way more willing to listen to like up and coming people who, have, unique ideas. Like, it's just, I don't know. I just feel like if we had a more open system in terms of who Hollywood was willing to work with, I just think it would be for the best for everybody. I just think that like the East is ahead of us in terms of that stuff by a long shot.
Another thing with Hollywood is it's even like Netflix. They always try to do quantity over quality.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the shows on Netflix, like aren't even good, or the movies they make.
Netflix also has no. Sorry, go ahead.
There's always that one gem like Squid Game or like the Dahmer show blew up. Like they always have a gem that pops up, but most of their stuff you just look past. What were you gonna say, Starblast?
I was gonna say, like, the thing about it was with Netflix is that they kind of have that problem where they don't really market their shows in a lot of the smartest ways. They just because with Disney Plus and other subscription services or Crunchyroll or whatever, they have the episodes going up there on a weekly basis, and it allows them to to gather up some hype for every single episode, for people to kind of tune in and get people talking about it on social media to go ahead and do that. But with Netflix, they just drop every single episode on the on their website, like all at once. Yeah. And I remember this being actually a thing that messed with one of the anime's viewability. This was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure part 2 of part 6. Yeah. Stone Ocean. Like the second half of that was significantly under advertised, and there wasn't any way for them to make up to make up what was lost with the hype train, because there was so much stuff that went on there, like a lot of crazy things and a lot of aspects of the show that was really a lot of the events was just like groundbreaking. They were crazy. They were like super out there. And a lot of the things that a lot of the things that the JoJo fandom would go nuts over if they had never read the manga, but it was significantly underwhelming, the amount of hype and the lack of attention and the lack of conversation that people had with that part, because Netflix just dropping them dropping the episodes like all at once just made the entire show lose the hype that it had in comparison to when part 5 was running, where we had new episodes of that going on and different stands and different villains every single week. They're, because the show kind of has that sort of villain of the week type of formula, and without that, it doesn't work. So it's just like even like Netflix in and of itself with its formula has things that also kind of hurt it.
Yeah, it's like, why are you going to throw all this money into a product that they're willing to let you adopt? They're willing to let you like adapt it into like your own thing. Why, if you know it's going to flop, why, like, if they should know by now. It's not that hard to see, you know, like after the first flop, it's like this isn't going to work unless you do it differently. If you did it differently and you were true to the source material and you drew inspiration from the same place they did and you actually tried to make it feel authentic, then people would be way more likely to get invested in these like live actions Netflix adaptations. But nobody is going to settle for a second-rate product that does not compare, nor does it feel like the actual product itself. Nobody's ever going to do that.
Like, what's the one? Oh, man, I can't think of the name. The anime where the kid Death Note. That's a perfect example of what you were just saying. A lot of people hated the live action movie, but they adore the anime. So yeah, that's just a perfect example of what.
Now I do understand. I'm not one of these people that doesn't understand that when you're adapting something to live action, it's not easy to recreate it the same way that it's. I understand that anime and film are two different things. Like, I'm not ignorant to that. But that being said, that does not mean that the examples I've seen of them adapting anime have been horrendous, because they have. The characters not like, it's not even that the actors aren't necessarily suited in most cases. It's the way they portray, the way they portray the actors to you, the way that they show them off to you. Like, in most cases, they butcher their character on purpose because they want to have some kind of weird spin on it that isn't what it originally was. They butcher the outfits. They don't make it seem like the actual thing. It's like a weird. It's very obvious that it's a weird Netflix knockoff, and nobody's going to go for that. They're never going to go for that.
It was true.
There's a reason we went to anime, guys. There's a reason we went over there. You're just trying to turn anime into what pushed us towards anime to begin with. That's what you're doing. It doesn't make any sense.
But it's funny though, because like I wouldn't even say that the West is the only type of like the East has these exact same problems as well. Like, the West isn't the only one that does that. Like, you could even see with the live action anime adaptations in Japan, like with Full Metal Alchemist or with Attack on Titan, and even there's these other versions of Death Note as well, that before, like, they had these live action adaptations, and they were just not nearly as good. With the Attack on Titan one in particular, they completely changed the story. They completely changed around the characters. Some of the characters didn't even have the same names. Like, they switched the names around, and they have cars and they have cars and, like, what was it, like I think they had.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if there's like 5 Death Note live action adaptations in Asia. I wouldn't be surprised if there was like 20, One Piece live action adaptations. Like, they do that like crazy over there. The thing about it is like the difference over there.
There is one Death Note version that is good.
Yeah, the difference is they have way more production. They're not limited to Hollywood. They have they have way more production companies scattered all the way throughout Asia that can just be like, you know what, we want to adapt this. You know what I mean? And some of them don't even ask permission because, well, some of them don't even get permission. That's the thing. Like,
from like the creator, right?
Yeah, like a lot of these like knockoff, like, for example, there's like a Chinese live action Dragon Ball film. They didn't get permission for that. Like, it's just
talking about.
Like, it's just.
I know what you're talking about.
It's different there because if in most cases, if you see a live action version made, it's because it's being mass produced by like a small production company who doesn't have the means to do it justice to begin with. Whereas Hollywood does not have that excuse. They don't have that excuse. They are the richest entertainment industry in the world. They can do they're capable of doing way more. We've seen what they're capable of doing. It's just, I just feel like whoever is managing how much money and how much time and how much effort and how much passion is put into specific projects in Hollywood. It's not. I just don't think it's necessarily the best. I don't think they're necessarily handling it the best. I think now. Don't get me wrong. It might not even hurt them that bad because a lot of this stuff that they flopped in terms of adapting, they can literally just try to adapt it again, and just put actual money into it, and then they're fine or whatever. But I just don't. I think it's a huge waste of money and time to create a product that is in no way superior or even equal to the product that you're adapting. I just think it's a huge waste of money. I hate seeing it. I don't even like seeing it.
They know it's gonna fail and they don't care anyway. They just do it.
Yeah, and to me that just seems
it's a waste.
Not only is it a waste, it seems like a bad approach in general.
Yeah, and you're taking a dump on nostalgia for people. Like Evolution. Should I get up and leave again? Are you gonna get the flamethrower? but Evolution, I don't even think they put that much money into it.
I doubt it.
That's like Spider-Man, practically. Like how Spider-Man is here. They should have thrown barrels of money at the people who would actually want to make it. Because Man of Steel, for example, the fighting with Zod and Superman at the end, the entire time I'm like, this is perfect for Dragon Ball live action. Like, this is perfect. But we got people on freaking wires in Evolution, as you could see them doing it, and horrible actors too. But you could tell they did not give a crap. They knew they had something big from Japan. They probably had no idea what they had, and they didn't care about it. And it's a shame because,
well, no one is to blame, but the directors and the producers and the people who are actually in charge of the film becoming what it is. I had the pleasure of meeting James Marsters, the guy that played who played Piccolo in the film.
I like him.
He was an extremely nice guy. He had a lot of respect for the fandom. He actually told me that he played Zamasu for free under an alias just to make up for the fact that he was in Dragon Ball Evolution and that he was a part of that abomination to the Dragon Ball fandom. So you can't even put it on the actors or anybody like that. It's just it's literally all on the production companies in Hollywood who are just so rigid and so blind to the fact that they are literally shooting themselves in the foot in a lot of cases with these products that they're putting out. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But him as Piccolo, even though that movie was the worst thing man ever created, he probably, I think,
he killed it as Piccolo.
Yeah, he was trying to make Piccolo, which out of all the characters, I felt like he was Piccolo out of everybody. But
Goku was so. Oh my god! No offense, Justin Chadwin.
That's
no
not
offense,
his
bro.
role.
I'm not trying to be. I'm not blaming you. Like I just said, I'm not blaming you.
Most of the time, it's the director's fault.
I'm not blaming you. Okay, I do think you doing some research around the character would have been cool. But
he did not at all.
But I'm not blaming you. But like that version of his character is so unforgivably bad. It's just like there's no.
Kid.
I can't forgive that.
And instead of his gi, they're like, let's give him an orange and blue hoodie.
Bro, the part where he's at the party.
No, I know what you're doing.
Like, oh my gosh, man.
We could just do a podcast just making fun of this movie.
You know what? That movie,
oh my gosh.
That movie, look, you know what? I'm going to say something very controversial. And I'm going to say that if you look at that film as an American Hollywood parody of Dragon Ball rather than an actual serious product, like if you actually sit down and watch it like, oh, this is just Hollywood, like pretend that they're like butchering the movie
a
on purpose.
Movie for anime.
Yeah. Pretend that they're butchering it on purpose, and it can actually be pretty entertaining and funny if you pretend that they're doing it on purpose. But you have to do that. You have to you have to ignore that they want you to take the product seriously.
Whenever I do watch it, that's how you gotta watch it. I mean, you know Chris Stuckman. You know, you
Oh
ever
yeah,
seen he does like Hilariosity?
I
Dragon
saw
Ball
that review.
Evolution was one
Very
of
good review.
his. Yeah, it was because he's a huge Dragon Ball fan like us, and he hated that movie with a passion. But that's how he looks at it, like it's a
Yeah.
spoof, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole thing we're talking about, we're not just saying, "Oh, comic characters suck" and all this and that. Sorry, I'm kind of switching it up. Yeah, we're just saying like there is some amazing comic characters out there. Like
it's all in how they're handled.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I specifically feel like I actually wanted to mention this a little bit earlier. I feel like with Batman, let's talk Batman for example. He's like in his case. You want to know why I feel like he's so much more interesting and so much more popular? I mean him in Spider-Man, but let me get into Batman first. Is because the themes of what made, and even though it wasn't like, original, he was just meant to be like a knockoff of, Superman. They literally just changed.
He was like a detective, actually. He was originally like a detective. Who just wore a Batman costume and.
But the current themes that they have for like how he is like right now like for like what he's based on, like he's a guy with parental problems. Because he lost his parents and such, he has
right in front of him,
and he's like an overall like dark character with a lot of like his character writing and actions not really it's more. You can understand why he does the things that he does, but it's more for subtle reasons and such. And the times where he actually blows out and he's like showing emotion, there's a lot more substance to it. Why do you think that a lot of the other than a select few, of course, but why do you think that most Batman movies always seem to like get it so right, and like and they like the ones with Christian Bale, the ones recently with Robert Pattinson was very okay. Well, I was talking. Well, I was saying like I say most, but like not all. Listen, there's
bat nipples, bro.
Bat nipples. God, Batman and Robin. No, unforgivable.
Nah, the Tim Burton Batmans were good. Michael Keaton.
It can be funny.
Yeah, I can't.
The thing about it is like Batman has been approached so many different ways, though.
Yeah, there's so many ways you can.
The thing about it is like Batman is like a weird. Like Batman is actually, if you want to like argue in terms of like Batman's success, I think Batman has been successful because it actually adapts to the times pretty well in comparison to most media. Like whenever they had it as a comedy at one point, they had it as like a compelling detective thing that you would read in the very early days, and then it just gets more complex and as time goes on, like, now we've got him. Now he's basically a ninja. You know what I mean? Like, people don't realize, like, Batman was not always a ninja, guys.
Nope.
He was not always a ninja.
TV show?
Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, yeah, I think more than anything, I think Batman is just one of those characters that, like, they've actually, he's an exception to the rule where they've actually done a good job re-implementing his character over and over again. Whereas in a lot of other cases, they don't do a good job.
Yeah. They transitioned him changing with times really well. Like, it worked out. He is one of the best comic book characters out there. There's a reason why he's this popular. Another thing, I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to bring it up before. But you guys ever notice how similar a comic book character and an anime character, two of the most popular characters, have a very similar origin? Superman and Goku.
Yeah.
You ever notice that?
I think Toriyama did that on purpose because Toriyama created a character called Superman in Dr. Slump, and Superman. The whole point. Okay, this is going to be kind of a complicated thing, but I'll explain it the best I can. This is why I think that Toriyama decided to like take from Superman, specifically because not only is he a Superman fan, but Goku is a play on the opposite concept of Superman, because Superman's whole thing was that he was a hero, but he was a hero for himself. Okay, Superman's whole thing was that if you didn't give him credit for being a superhero, he was going to hurt you.
Jeez.
Like he
The
would
early
he would
concept, yeah.
literally yeah, he would like sabotage your vehicle or some weird stuff. Like if you didn't give him the credit he felt he deserved, he
Like,
was just
thanks
a
for
complete
saving
jerk.
me. Yeah.
So he's supposed to be like a false hero in a way. And I
Like
think
ego
that
tripping.
was their way of criticizing early Superman. Because early Superman, a lot of people don't realize this, but early Superman was a mouthpiece for a lot of propaganda back in the day. Like
I didn't
way
know.
early Superman, like he was implemented into a lot of anti-Japanese propaganda. He was implemented into a lot of anti-everything propaganda, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
like due to the fact that he was constantly being, shown as some sort of heroic figure, even during those days, whenever he was being openly racist and destructive,
Oh my god.
they see him as like a false hero type figure. Whereas Goku, the way Toriyama's written him, he's written him in a way to be the truest form of hero that there is from an Eastern perspective. He is like the opposite of Superman in the sense that he doesn't want any self gratification for his actions. He just wants to get stronger. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't want any credit. He's not like nothing he's doing is he doing for self gratification. He's doing it for, just for his own self improvement. So
Yeah.
like Superman in a way, Goku sort of criticizes Superman's philosophy as a character through his existence. And I think that's sort of like why Toriyama considers him his own personal Superman and like a new and improved version of Superman, because he doesn't have that same issue of being like a false hero in comparison to Superman. I think that's where his mind was at whenever he was, comparing Superman to Goku. Now, Toriyama is also just a huge Superman fan, and Superman has a very similar backstory to the Monkey King as well. As a matter of fact, before Dragon Ball was ever a thing, there were comics that were comparing Superman to the Monkey King. I actually have an old Thai comic where Superman defeats the Monkey King, and he goes to heaven and plays out the events of Journey to the West for a short span of time, and they literally replace the Monkey King with Superman. I have a comic, a very
Yep.
very old comic, where they replace the monkey, and they actually call him Stone Man in the comic instead of Superman. He looks just like Superman, but they
Yeah.
call him Stone Man because the Monkey King was born from a stone, so it's a play on that. He's instead of a monkey
That's
being born from
interesting.
a stone, a man is born from a stone, and that man is Superman, and that's essentially what the whole thing of the story is. It's explaining why the Monkey King being a monkey was important in the story, and him not being a man, because him being a monkey, that fed into his purity, that fed into him having pure intentions. He was an animal who was a slave to his instinctual behavior, to his need to survive. Like he wasn't necessarily as with it as a human. I mean, he was very intelligent, but due to the fact that he was sort of a slave to his instincts, like his approach to things, it came from a pure place. Like even the evil that he did came from a pure place. Like his heart was pure. Whereas with Superman, a lot of the early versions of his character, it's the exact opposite. He is not he's actually doing good things with bad intentions rather than doing
Yeah.
bad things with good intentions. So
I
there's
see.
always been like a weird relationship between the Monkey King, Goku, and Superman.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it actually goes way back farther than people even realize. Like it's a weird philosophical thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's,
Superman, what, came out in like the early 50s? Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
Starblast.
no, you're good.
Okay. Go
I
ahead,
was
good
about to
say.
say because it's just I think that you can I can definitely see like when Goku was being made, he was like, okay, he's doing it as like, legitimate criticism, but I don't even think that the backstory, because obviously when Toriyama first created Dragon Ball, Goku wasn't even supposed to be an alien. He was just a
Right. He
kid
was
with a
just the
tail.
Monkey King.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was just a play on Wukong and such.
Yeah.
But then later on, like that whole backstory did come in, and that thing was changed. So you see, it was just like it wasn't even like people want to like say, oh, like the backstories are the same, but that's not even what Goku is kind of meant to be in the first place. Actually, Toriyama almost ended the entire show, his whole manga after the Dragon Balls had all been found. It almost just ended there. But then
during the Dragon Ball Z era, he was like, you know what, sci-fi is popping right now. People love sci-fi. People love a lot of these new age sci-fi films that are coming out. So guess what? Like these comics. So guess what? Guess what I'm taking inspiration from? Like he has said plenty of times. He's like, if you want to make money in the entertainment industry, study how other people are making money. He has said that himself. Like he has openly stated this in his guide for people to learn how to make compelling manga that sells. He actually has a guide that he uses to try and teach people in Jump how to make compelling manga that can make money. And he says that himself. He's like, study other media, study what makes them compelling, study what makes them entertaining. So he knows what he's doing in that sense. Like I mean, you can kind of call it cheap, but it's really no different than what everyone else is doing, even on a subconscious level. There's people who are doing that. Yeah. Well, there's people who are doing that.
Yeah.
There's people who are doing that who are coming up with original material who don't even realize that they're subconsciously using material that they have gathered throughout their lifetime that they were entertained by. You know what I mean? So it's just like he's just taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
Like their story, their origin isn't identical, frame to frame, but they had similarities to it, which
One really cool thing I noticed recently is in a lot of the early Jor-El art, like Superman's dad.
Yep.
He's wearing a red bandana like Bardock. So I thought that was really cool.
Shit. Damn, that's a fun fact right there. I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Holy shit. Thanks for listening to our episode. If you're on YouTube and watch the video, then thank you for watching as well. We are your hosts, Starblast Studios, and me, Daredevil19. And if you enjoyed our episode on Spotify, be sure to give us a follow and a rating. And we do thank you. And if you did watch this on YouTube, be sure to give a like if you liked it, and a subscribe if you enjoyed it. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Plastic Power Podcast.